Okay, so I was playing with this synthetic wig that I got when I realized that I reminded myself of one of the High Fae of maybe like the Autumn Court from the Court of Thorns and Roses series. So that's what I created. I don't have elf ears, however, my ears are pretty big and they stick out and they're doofy, so they worked instead of having elf ears. But yeah, just keep watching if you want to see how I got this look. My name is Kate. I'm a licensed esthetician and a professional makeup artist based in the Hudson Valley. I post makeup tutorials, model applications, kit tours, skincare tips, and more. Make sure to subscribe, and let's get on with the video. To start, I use these really cute clips, butterfly clips, to pin back my hair or my fake hair. I probably could have just taken off the wig, but I wanted to kind of stay in character, if you will. So once I did that, I prepped my skin. I'm using the Sonia Roselli Water Elixir, followed by the Water Balm, and on my lips, I'll link the mask down below. It's just really creamy lip mask. That way, when I do my skin later on, or my lips later on, my lips are nice and hydrated, and they're not all crackly and stuff like that. I think they ended up crackly anyway, but then it's okay. Doesn't matter. We're all good. We're fine here. Once I've done that, I'm going to start on the eyes. For primer, I'm using the Urban Decay Shadow Potion, Primer Potion. I always mix up that with the Shadow Insurance. But this is the Primer Potion, and then I'm using a Danessa Myricks Concealer to prep the lids. This stuff dries down very matte, and it's very opaque, so I'm only doing a thin layer just to kind of cancel out the redness and the veining that I have on my lids before I get started. So a lot of this look is really focused on the skin and the tones that you're using in your face. So I'm going to be using the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance Eye Palette, but you can use any palette that you want that has similar tones. Basically, I'm taking the lightest color in the palette and I'm using that to set underneath my brows. Following up with that light color, that light brown color underneath, that's going to go all over. The lightest gold is going to be brushed over the whole lid, and then that lightest shimmery shade will go on the inner corner. So it's a very easy eye look. Most of the focus is on the skin for this. Surprise, surprise, I'm focusing on the skin. So just applying that kind of khaki color all over my entire lid. I'm blending it up into the crease, and once I've done that and I'm happy with the shape that I have, I'm going to kind of just glide over top that lightest shimmery shadow that's in the palette. I don't want to create like a super opaque shimmer, but I want to create like a wash of glow because the skin's going to be very glowy and I want to tie that in with the eyes too. So it's very pretty. And once I've done that, again applying that lightest shimmery shade on the inner corner, I like to brush it up around the inner part of my orbital bone. You don't have to do that, but that's what I like to do. And for liner, I'm taking the darkest color in the palette. I think it's called Cypress, but I'll double check. I'm just doing a soft line, lining my lashes. And instead of doing a wing or anything like that, I'm actually kind of keeping it downturned just a little bit in the corners. I wanted to create more of a doe-eyed effect, like a classic doe-eyed sad eye effect, kind of a little more reminiscent of maybe the 1920s than your typical. I feel like a lot of these looks you usually see, kind of like an upwards wing to create a cat eye. That's not what I did here, but you can definitely do that if you want. Now for skin, I'm taking Danessa Myricks Liquid Highlight. This in the color Serenity. I'm mixing that with my foundation, which is Face Atelier, and a little bit of the Sonia Roselli Water Elixir. Mixing all three of those together, and I'm going to buff that into my skin. I did leave most of this footage in so you can see how I do it, but just using a kind of a flat, dense shader brush and really buffing it in, really working it in. One of the reasons I love to add the liquid highlight directly to the foundation is because it gives it such a nice glow, and I feel like almost takes away any potential cakiness that you might get. It kind of creates a little bit of a trick when you're looking at it. So apply that to the coverage that you're comfortable with. For me personally, I like to do pretty light coverage, just kind of even out my skin tone, and I'll focus excess where I have any blemishes, but any kind of perfecting, that's what I do the concealer for. I also sweep a bit of this underneath the eyes to act as a base for the concealer that I'm going to apply next. So I'm using the same concealer that I used to prep my lids and applying that underneath the eyes. I don't do a ton of concealer under the eyes, especially not this concealer because it's very opaque and it's very full coverage. So applying it mainly to the inner corner and also a little bit on the outer corner, crisping up that liner line. Again, I'm not changing the shape though. I want to still keep it a little downward, turned a little downwards. I'm also applying leftover concealer to any blemishes that I have that were not covered by the foundation. Just applying that, I get very red around my nose, so that's probably where most of it ends up going. Once I've done that, I'll just blend out the concealer using combinations of the same foundation brush that I had and my fingers. Just buff, 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 buff. Continue blending. One of the reasons I like to put a little bit of the foundation underneath my eyes that you saw I did before is because I have to use less concealer then, and I feel like it ends up looking more natural and less cakey, and it settles less when I have less product. So for the rest of the skin, I'm using a foundation that's a couple of shades, quite a few shades darker. What am I talking about? I use a 4 and this is a 12, and also that kind of peachy blush tone that you saw in the Ben Nye cream palette. But I'm sculpting my face using this foundation. Now, I'm doing a little bit more of an extreme sculpt for myself. I don't tend to do a lot of contour. So I'm doing a good bit of contour underneath my cheekbones, but I'm also kind of dragging it down, as you can see there, because I want to create this really sculpted, still pretty natural, don't get me wrong, but definitely more of a sculpted look than I normally have. You don't have to do this. You can create the contour any shape that you want, but I wanted to give more of a hollowed out cheek impression, and that's what bringing that contour down in that almost L shape, that's kind of what that does. So it's not just giving me a sharper cheekbone, but it's almost, I mean, I'm chunky, so I'm not hollowing out my cheeks by any means, but it's kind of giving a little bit of that illusion. I'm also taking the contour a little bit, just a little bit onto my forehead, although most of that will be concealed by the wig and the crown I'm wearing later, and I'm going to contour my nose. I'm contouring my nose just a little bit slimmer, but I'm mainly adding some more dimension to it, and I'm focusing on that slimming effect to the tip. I'll also go around and create a V shape at the tip. I cannot speak, but I'm not trying to get rid of my nose. I don't want to have like a tiny pencil nose or anything by any means, but I just want to give, more shape to it, make it a little bit slimmer, nothing crazy. So do that, line it out, and then I took another concealer. This is another Danessa Myricks color. The color I was using before was W1, so warm one. And this is neutral one. Even though they're both ones, this color pops a lot more. It's a lot lighter on my skin. So I'm taking that just right into that inner corner to add a little bit more brightness there. And I'm using a very small amount of that right on those high points that I want to exaggerate. So down the center, the bridge of my nose, kind of right on my cupid's bow and up into the philtrum, and a little bit onto my chin. You see I'm extending that up right between the eyes because I want to draw some attention there. I'm also doing that on the right, like the back, like the start of my temple, like right where my eye ends and into the temple and going up a little bit because, again, I'm trying to create a very light illusion of a lift, and I want to draw the eye more center. I want to make my face look a little more structured than it naturally is. And so again, blending out with a combination of my fingers and the brush until I'm happy with the shape. You can do less contouring, you can do more contouring. I think honestly in the grand scheme of things, especially when you look like in the YouTube and Instagram world, this isn't a ton, but so you can definitely, go more dramatic with it if you really want to do like a legitimate, high Fae transformation, but I was just an inspired look, and I still wanted it to look like myself, like I could wear this, and it just made me feel more Fae-like and not necessarily like it was a costume. So that's the level of drama that I went with my contouring and highlighting. So for blush, I kept that peachy color to the outside of my face, as you can see there, right at the tops of my cheekbones, going up into the temples. Again, I wanted to kind of elongate my face. I wanted to bring it up, draw attention there. I didn't want to look so, baby doll innocent and have that color, in the forefronts, the apples of my cheeks. I wanted everything to look a little more narrowed, more structured. So that's what I did. I did the C going from the cheekbones up into the temples with that cream blush. Once I've done with that, I'm taking more of that liquid highlighter that I used, and I'm dabbing that on the high points of my face. As you can tell, I'm very glowy anyway, but I really wanted these areas to pack a punch. So I'm following similarly that I did with the blush, just instead of keeping it on the outside perimeter, I'm doing that C kind of really right close, so right underneath my eye, going into my brow and right above it. So to move on to powders, I'm blending out the concealer that's underneath my eyes before I go into set with loose powder. I'm doing that because if you have any creases under your eyes when you set, you're setting your creases and you don't want to do that. So just using the warmth of my fingers to blend away any creases or anything that wasn't, so crisp before I set it. I'm also setting the same high points of my face that I had highlighted, such as the bridge of my nose, above my lip, and my chin. And I'm also using this color to sculpt and sharpen up beneath where I contoured. So you can see I'm just taking that brush and going along that shape that I made before going in with contour powder. This powder is the Kat Von D from the Kat Von D's original powder. This is the lightest of the contour shades in it. So it's just a light, cool tone brown, and I'm using that pretty much to go over where I applied the darker foundation, but I'm not going in as heavily with it. Because that foundation is more warmer toned, is more of a warm tone, it gives a little bit more of a bronze than a true contour. So I just applied the powder to make it look more natural in those areas that I really wanted it, to be contoured. I also took that down the nose, and you can see a little bit better here that I'm kind of creating the shape that I want. I swear to God, I say kinda so freaking much. And every time I watch back these videos, I want to smack myself in the face, and I can't help it. I keep doing it. But I digress. Whatever, it is what it is. So I took the same khaki color and I ran that along the bottom lash line. I also went in with a little bit more of the lighter color on that inner corner. You can definitely do a smoky. Oh, this is where I noticed that my highlight was looking streaky AF. So just blended that biatch out, make it a little less crappy looking. But I didn't do a dramatic eye look. I really wanted the focus just to be on the overall kind of aesthetic, So that being said, you can go smoky as you want or, not as you want. But for blush, to set the powder blush that I did, going, as you can see, that bright orange in the palette, I'm also cutting myself off. What am I doing while I'm doing this voiceover? Jeez, it's ridiculous. So anyway, I'm following the same shape that I did before with the blush. I'm also dusting a little bit over the eyes. It's very subtle and it's not super noticeable, but it just kind of ties those colors and those tones in together. As you can see above my lips, I had darkened around my mouth with the same contour cream that I used, the foundation that I used on my cheeks. And then for some reason, ask me why I did this, and I cannot tell you. I went in with that same brush and the darker color, and I looked like Mushu from Mulan. Big mistake. Would not do that again. But so I cleaned that up with the concealer that I had on a leftover brush. I'll write the lip liner that I used in the description box below because I don't remember. But I topped it with the same Danessa Myricks liquid highlight. For brows, I filled them in very lightly, kept them very fluffy, very natural looking, or, kind of that soap brow style. Before I set them with NYX Brow Gel. This is the the Control Freak gel. Just brush them in. Although I didn't today, you'll sometimes see me going in with some concealer underneath the brow and just above. Not a lot, not a thick layer, not super bright, but I do a lot of blending and a lot of back and forth. I really, rub the crap out of those spoolies in my brows, and it can sometimes create a mess. So if that happens to you, if you really work it in, it's okay. You can clean up with a little bit of concealer. So after that, I went in with a couple of coats of mascara on both my top and bottom lashes before realizing that I did not like the lip with this look. So I removed the lip that I previously had, blanked my lips out with leftover foundation that I had on the foundation brush I used to blend my skin, and topped that with a little bit more of a bright pink gloss, but I only did a light layer of it. I wanted there to be a little bit more of a pop of color, not anything too crazy. You can see it still looks very natural, but the rest of the tones were definitely obviously more autumnal, more, brown, bronze, orangey colors. I wanted something that stood out a little bit more than that. I didn't want it to look monotonous. So once I was done with that, applied this is a nude eyeliner into the waterline to brighten my eyes a little bit before going in with lashes. These lashes are the Baby Demis by Ardell. Really pretty. They're wispy. They're thick, they're fluttery, but they're not too big. So, oh God, that face is horrible. Once I had them on and I felt that they were nice and in pretty much the position I wanted them to be, I went over with the lash curler again just to make sure they were really stuck to my natural lashes and that the blend would be more seamless. I attempted to make an in-character TikTok and I haven't watched the full completed thing since I downloaded it off this background site. So what you're going to hear is going to be my honest blind reaction to the absolute cringy shit show you were about to see. It's going to be terrible and I know it, but I had to include it. Oh my God. What the fuck, Katie? I was thinking that it couldn't be so bad to make these, but no, I was wrong. It's worse. What is this? Wow. Great job. Fucking TikTok star in the making, man. Make sure you subscribe so you can see more of this crap.